Hi, Elizabeth. I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A real pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Good. You too.
People who haven't seen Firebrand yet, maybe you can just give us a brief intro to the film and set the scene for the story for us.
Okay, well, Firebrand takes the story, or a part of the story, of Catherine Parr, the last wife of Henry VIII, the one in the rhyme we all know so well from school, the one who survived. But, what we don't know from that rhyme is the story of her survival, and what an astonishing game of brinkmanship and danger she had to negotiate to survive. It tells the story of a woman who had been forced into marriage with what we would now class as a psychopath, or someone with a pathological narcissism. And, it's about a brutal, toxic marriage, as well as the story of a queen who lived in the Tudor period. And, so it's a story that's at once kind of distance and part of history, but it has an immediacy because I think that story of survival speaks to us now.
Absolutely. And I guess I know you've written quite a few books since, but this was your debut novel. What initially sparked your interest in this figure from history? And I guess maybe, yeah, giving her that time and space that she hadn't yet been given in the historical record.
I'd been interested since childhood, really, in the wives of Henry VIII. I think those stories, him, this sort of figure of he's like a kind of Bluebeard figure, isn't he? He's like a monster from a fairy tale. I was very interested in those stories, but it wasn't until I studied English literature, and I was very interested in the writings, the early modern writings from women. So women really beginning to find their voices, putting their ideas down on paper. And I discovered that Catherine Parr was the first woman to write an original work in the English language. I thought, nobody knows this. How is it that this woman, who's just the survived anecdote in the rhyme, she was the first author, the first female author in the English language. And so that kind of sparked something in me. But also the fact that she was a political activist. She had dangerous beliefs. She was, the firebrand of the title. She was, highly educated, incredibly shrewd. She managed to negotiate the kind of what was the incredibly stifling patriarchy of the time. And I just thought, no one knows this. They all remember her as a boring nursemaidy one who kind of, mopped his brow in his dotage. But no, she survived a blot on her life. And, so I thought, well, I've got to write a novel about her, because so many of the other wives had been written about by other novelists. And I felt I wanted to set her story straight for a modern reader. I think there are versions of these stories for each generation. And so, and I think they're all different, and they all have their place.
And how did you feel? I mean, I think the book hadn't even hit shelves, I believe, before, it was already been optioned for the big screen. But, knowing that might be in the pipeline, and then having a director come on like Kareem, I know it was his first English language film, but, done some spectacular work before. What did that mean to you?
I mean, it's been a very, very long road. So the kind of original option, it was kind of than my books being optioned. That's really exciting, because also I'm a real movie buff. I love the cinema, and it was a dream of mine. But I also was quite realistic, because a lot of books get optioned and very few actually make it to the screen. So I thought, well, it probably won't happen. If it does happen, it'll probably take 10 years. And lo and behold, 10 years on, I get the call from Gabby, the producer, and she says, "Yep, it's going ahead." And I nearly fell off my chair. And it's been a series of pinch me moments, and it made me understand quite how much it takes to get a book to the screen. There are so many different elements that all have to fall into place, and it's been the thrill of my career, really. Yeah.
and then going through that process, and then this phenomenal cast coming on board, Alicia Vikander and Jude Law, I guess, we've never seen him before. I mean,
Yeah.
this is really an incarnation, he holds nothing back in the way he portrays Henry VIII. Having these sort of A-listers take on your story and breathe life into it, for the big screen, that must have been an amazing moment too.
Yeah, it really was. And I'd seen the first film I ever saw with Alicia in it was called A Royal Affair. It was a Danish film about a young English princess who is very educated and very interested in books and issues about the Enlightenment, which were quite taboo, and she is married into the Danish royal family. And I was so bowled over by her performance, and it became a dream. I thought, God, wouldn't it be amazing if she were to be cast in a film of one of my books? And that was 10 years ago when Queen's Gambit was first published. And lo and behold, it's her who plays. In fact, Catherine Parr is there's a relationship between those two characters in some ways. That the young princess in A Royal Affair is almost like a young iteration of Catherine Parr in some ways. And Jude, well, I mean, I was really astonished when they said that they'd cast him as Henry VIII. I couldn't get my head around it. But Karim was talking about it and said, but well, we all remember Jude as this young, beautiful young man. And everybody in that time, in the Tudor time, everybody remembered Henry as this beautiful young prince. He was like the hot prince of Europe at the time when he was young. And so there's that, he brings along that similar parallel. There's always somehow that charismatic young man. But yeah, I mean, Jude is unrecognizable, and he really goes there. He's terrifying at times, really, really terrifying. And the way he kind of manipulates everybody at court, it's chilling.
And I felt, and I was just like reading in the press notes as well, and kind of the feel of the film is not what you kind of expect from a period drama somehow. And, not only in the characterizations, but also sort of the look and feel of it. And it's sort of, some moments almost feel like a horror or, quite kind of garish. And, if you think even just like, what he's dealing with his legs, it becomes quite kind of visceral. And I don't know whether there's something in that it brings a different element to a period drama like this. Was that also something that I guess was there in the book, but seeing that put visually as well?
It is there in the book, and the kind of horrible, gangrenous, stinky leg, the ulcerating leg, it is there in the book, and I really wanted to create some of the disgust around it, but also some of the pain and the horror. It is a horror story in many ways. She's trapped in this place with this monster. So, and I think Karim, because the narrative is quite condensed, he's taken a part of my book, and really, it's really intense and really claustrophobic. I'm interested that you mention horror because there are elements of that, and really kind of moments of kind of those kind of revolting shocks, and it really, I think the atmosphere of the film really kind of puts you in there with them and makes you kind of understand really what she was going through, what all those people in that place with that monster, what they were all going through. I think it's incredibly visceral.
And in terms of the takeaways, both from the book and now the big screen version, I guess, it is important to go back in history and throw a spotlight on these individuals, who didn't sort of have a fair understanding in their time, and they can be forgotten about. But I think in addition to that, there are lots of things that can chime with a contemporary audience today. And, seeing even some of the behaviors of Henry VIII, we would now probably call that, coercive behavior. And, we were able to sort of label these things as misogyny, but they're very much part and parcel of society today as well. So, in terms of those takeaways, what do you think they might be?
I completely agree. I mean, I think, what it is essentially at its core, this is a portrait of a monstrously toxic marriage. And as you say, those ideas about coercive control and pathological narcissism, they were all in my mind when I was writing it. And I really think the film really embraces that. And I think let's just look at the fact that 3 women a week are murdered by men in the UK. We're not talking about other parts of the world where women are forced into marriages and where, there is, the really outwardly misogynistic patriarchy. Here we say, oh, women have equality, but actually women suffer greatly at the hands of men still. And I think these stories are I think Catherine Parr's story shows us this picture of survival. I mean, she survived. She really nearly was executed. There was a warrant for her arrest signed by Henry VIII. What happened to the predecessors? Well, we know they went to the block. She managed to talk her way out of it. So it's a story. It shows how women can survive, how strong they can be and how they can be heard. And so I think there's a positive take from it. I know it's a grim story and it's a terrifying story, but ultimately there's something triumphant about her. And I think that speaks to contemporary audiences and women in particular.
Have you got some other works in the pipeline or any of your other books you think might be translated to the big screen? What's next for you?
Well, my most recently published book is called Disobedient, and it's about a painter, an Italian painter in 1611 called Artemisia Gentileschi. And again, it's interesting that it was published the year that Firebrand was coming out, because there are relationships between Artemisia and Catherine Parr. Artemisia was a painter, fighting against the patriarchy. She had to overcome some really astonishingly difficult obstacles, much in the same way Catherine Parr did. But Artemisia is very, very young, much younger. She's 17. And I'm in discussions about a film version of that, but it's very, very early days. So, watch this space in 10 years' time, maybe. These things take a long time. But there's that. And I've got another book that I'm writing as well right now. So, about another Italian woman.
And is it something that's always, I guess they're very different mediums, aren't they? And novels and films, but the fact that your story also can reach a completely different audience that, might not have read the book. I guess that always is an amazing feeling.
It's really exciting for me. I mean, it's a real thrill, and it's been, one of the high points of my life, really seeing my work translated onto the screen. It really has.
And it made its premiere in Cannes, right? Did you get to go to Cannes?
Yes, I did. That was a trip, I can tell you. It was really, just, you have this idea of what Cannes might be like, and it's that only much, much more so. Yeah, it was crazy. And, this huge auditorium, all standing and clapping. And Cannes is all about the standing ovations. I didn't realize before, but it's all about, how long do they clap for? And they just went on and on. It was incredible. Yeah, really something else.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. And I can't wait for everyone else here in the UK to have a chance to see Firebrand. Thanks so much.
You too. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much.
Chat to you. Thanks a lot. Bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.